Good morning, everybody. How are you? So good to have all of you here at this Southwest campus, but we're also joining all of you at all of our other campuses as well. Welcome to the Northwest campus, to the Terrace campus, to both of our Spanish-speaking campuses. We're one big happy family, yeah? I got to tell you something. I'm so excited about New Life Church right now. I can't even, it's just beyond me. We are fired up in 2019. And I wanted to give this message today from my heart to our entire family. So there's somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 of us are joining together, and I'm just, as the lead pastor, going to talk to you about something you don't even need. None of you need. At none of our campuses, you don't need this. We're going to talk about resolving conflict. I want you at all of our campuses to turn to the person beside you and say this: you really need this message today. Tell somebody, you really need this message today. I don't, but you do. We began this series a few weeks ago talking about from the Beatitudes, blessed are those who do this. And we're talking about God blessing our home. We've looked at two Beatitudes, and today we're going to talk about another way for our family to be blessed. And it comes from this Beatitude where Jesus said in Matthew 5, verse 9, and I want all of us, again, at all of our campuses together to read this out loud. Ready, go. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called. You want to be called a child of God? Then we have to work for peace. We got to work at resolving all of our difficulties in our relationships. I want to do a poll. To all of our church family, New Life, let me ask you this. How many of you, and let's be a little honesty check here, how many of you would say you've had at least one major conflict in your family in 2019? At all of our campuses, raise up your hand if you had. Now, if you haven't, that's cool. We want to be honest, okay? Let's do another one. How many of you have had a major conflict in your family this last week? Just be honest. You're in church. Lightning is going to strike you if you're lying. I'm not kidding. I am kidding. I'm kidding. Let's take it a little further. How many of you have had a conflict in your family in the last 24 hours? Can I see your hand? Man, some of you are professionals, man. You're professionals. The truth is, we all have conflict in our homes, in our families from time to time. So let's talk about what peacemaking is not. And then I'll tell you what it is. Peacemaking is not avoiding the problem. It's not running away from the conflict and saying, oh, Pastor James, we have the perfect family. We never have any conflict. Liar, liar, pants on fire. The truth is we all do. Some of us just avoid it. But that's not what peacemaking is. Peacemaking is not avoiding the problem. It's not pacifying the person. In other words, pacifying the person is, I'm going to let you have your way all the time. It's your way, honey, because I love you. And I just want you to have it your way, and, we're going to have peace at any price in our home. That's not peacemaking. So what is peacemaking? Peacemaking is actively working the peace plan. It's you and I actively working the peace plan. It's, that beatitude that Jesus gave us. There's another translation that says, blessed are those who work for peace. Everybody say work for. How many of you know it takes a little bit of work to resolve conflict in our families? In fact, it takes a lot of work sometimes to resolve conflict. You say, James, okay, so if it's such a hard thing, if it's work to do, why should I want to do it? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me give you a few reasons. It's in your outline or up on the screen. The first reason is because unresolved conflict blocks my fellowship with God. Wow. If I'm out of whack in my relationship with Lydia, that means I'm out of whack in my relationship with God. Here's what John said in 1 John 4. It says, if anyone boasts, I love God, and goes right on hating his brother or sister or wife or kids or parent, thinking nothing of it, he is a liar. If he won't love the person he can see, how can he love the God he can't see? The command we have from Christ is blunt. Say it with me, everybody, out loud. All campuses ready to go. Loving God includes loving people. You've got to love both. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's just pretend. You ladies, those of you who are married, the ladies, you're getting up this morning and you put on an outfit and your husband says, you aren't going to wear that to church, are you? That's when the fight begins. Oh, yes. Or let's just pretend that you're on your way to church, you're running 10 minutes behind. You know you have to park, way out somewhere. You're already frustrated. And the little wifey says, oh, honey, can we stop by 7-Eleven because I want to get some gum. And the fight begins. You drive on the campus, a New Life campus, you drive in there and you see the pastor. And you both smile and wave, it's all good. Then you walk in the door of the worship center and somebody says, hey, man, how you doing? You say, I'm great. You lie. I'm great, it's fine. Then you walk inside the worship center and you get comfortable and music starts, but you're frustrated. The little wifey's thinking, he said, this looks bad. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to shoot him. And the music starts and you raise your hands and it looks like you're worshiping God, but inwardly you're thinking, my wife is such a jerk. Love you, Jesus. I love you, Jesus. You are my deliverance. Or, man, I just cannot stand him right now. I got a question for you. In those sweet moments with Jesus, are you connected with Jesus? No. Why? Because when it's broken this way, it gets broken this way. That's why it's so important that we resolve our conflicts in our families. Another reason is unresolved conflict in my home prevents answered prayer. The next verse says it all. It says that, hey, those of you who are husbands, if you have unresolved conflict with your wife and you're not seeking to try to resolve it, that God is not even hearing your prayers. Oh, my gosh. Oh, by the way, that applies to all the ladies in the house, too. That if I have this conflict and it's just constantly there and I'm not resolving the conflict, that it's going to keep my prayers from being answered. In fact, Jesus put it this way. Jesus was very clear on this subject. In Matthew 5, in fact, if you check it out, Jesus' teachings, he talked more about this than just about anything else. He's always talking about you got to get the relational thing right, especially in the areas of conflict. And in Matthew 5, he says, hey, if you're at church and you're worshiping and you remember that someone has an offense against you, leave church. Oh, by the way, he did say leave your offering at church before you leave. Leave your offering, then go take care of the offense, then come back to church. Now that puts resolving our relational conflicts on a very high level. So if some of you, if I see you get up in the middle of the service and you're leaving, it's cool. We get it. Just leave your offering. There's another reason why resolving conflict is so important. That is, it hinders my happiness. The truth is, when I am out of sync with my wife or my kids or my parents, that it makes me miserable. And I'm no fun to be around. You're probably not like that, but that's the way it is with me. Job 18:4 says, you are only hurting who? You're only hurting yourself with your anger. When Lydia and I first got married, of course, we were teenagers, and we weren't taught this, how to resolve conflict. So this was one of my go-to ways. This is a very mature way of resolving conflict. When it was late at night and Lydia and I would get into it, I'd do this very mature thing, and that is right in the middle of the argument. She's crying, and she's, and I'm upset, and I would just get up and go to bed. Dumb boy. I'd go to bed, and the thought was, she'll just get miserable, and she'll come groveling back to me and say she's sorry. And you know, the first 2 years, it worked well. It was awesome. But then she suddenly changed. I don't know why the switch came on inside her, but I remember the time it happened specifically. I did the thing, about 9, 10 o'clock. We got into it, and then I just went off right in the middle of it, went off to bed and waited for her to come in. 9, 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock. I am so mad. Why is she not coming in here to apologize? Y'all saying, man, I can't believe he's my pastor. I was 19. Give me a break. And I waited. I was so mad. So I walked in that living room to see where she was. And she was sleeping on the couch. And then, sure enough, I was ticked off. Because now I'm so adrenalized and pumped up, I can't go to sleep. And she's just lying there all peaceful. Here's the truth. Unresolved conflict makes us miserable internally. Yesterday and Friday, we had our first Kairos event and had right at 500 people show up for this event. It was just an amazing 2 days of healing and freedom. And but in it, in the conference, we dealt with these issues. Specifically, Pastor Bart, our campus pastor over the Terrace campus, talked about offenses. And it did in such a powerful way. He had this one part that I don't want to try to reproduce. I want you to hear what he said and give you a little taste of Kairos. But this is the importance of us dealing with our offenses. Let's watch the screens.
But here's the worst thing. The worst thing a wall does of offense, the worst thing a wall of unforgiveness does is this. It separates us from God. You see, when Jesus said, "It is finished," the Bible says that the veil in the temple that separated the people from the Holy of Holies, the holy place, the place where God dwelled, it says that it was rent from top to bottom. It's almost like God was saying, okay, no more separation. He's taken all your offenses and made them his. There's no more separation between you and me. And God said, it's done. But what happens is when we hold on to offense, when we hold on to unforgiveness, it's like we're taking each side of the veil and we take a thread and a needle and we start sewing it up. We start sewing up and we put the veil back between us and God. And the Holy Spirit can't work in our lives. The presence of God can't work in our lives. And we put up these walls of protection and we say stuff like, they can't hurt me anymore. And here's what happens. Hurt breeds hate. What is hate? Hate is the absence of love, which will turn into bitterness, which the enemy will use to destroy you. And if we don't learn how to deal with these things, we will be in prison. We will be in bondage. It's not them that will be in prison. It's you that will be in prison. The enemy's agenda is destruction. His strategy is division, and his tactic is offense.
Wow, powerful. So how do we then bridge the gap? How do we keep the separation from happening in our homes? Because Jesus said a house divided against itself what? Cannot stand. So how do we put it together and resolve the conflict and make peace? I want to give you a few ideas. These are not new, but they're biblical and they're powerful. I'm going to give you a peace plan. An acrostic of the word peace. You ready? Let's do this. The P, jot this down if you're taking notes. The P stands for Plan a Peace Conference. Plan a Peace Conference. In other words, make the effort. You take the first step. You initiate bringing about peace. Now, I want you to read with me, everybody at all of our campuses out loud. Matthew, no, not Philippians, Matthew 5, 23 through 24. Is that not up there? Is not in your outline? It is there. Well, then let's all read it from your outline if it's not going to be up on the screen. You ready, everybody? Ready, set, go? If you remember your brother has something against you, go at once to make peace. I want you to follow me for just a second. This is going to get really deep. You ready for this? Jesus said, if you remember that someone has an offense against you. The reason why I bring that up is in my flesh, myself, it's almost like, hey, I don't have the issue, they have the issue. And if Lydia has the issue, it's her responsibility to come to me. Sound familiar? But that's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, if you know that someone has an offense against you, you go to them. In other words, it's always your move. As a follower of Jesus Christ, it's always my move to initiate the peace plan and to move towards that person to reconcile the relationship. And notice Jesus said go at once. Everybody say at once. Not next year. At once. Not 3 decades from now. At once, right? Paul said it this way. He said, before the sun goes down, go take care of the issue. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. So I view that as, yeah, you may take a time out to, calm down a little bit, but that doesn't mean wait 10 years to calm down. That means within 24 hours, I'm going to do my best to reach out to that person and try to reconcile the issue between me and them. Now, Jesus said this. He said, go at once to that person who has an offense against you. But notice he said go to them. In fact, in Matthew 18, he says to go to them alone. Now watch this. If you go to anybody else other than a person who is a part of the problem or the solution, then it's one of two things. It's either gossip or slander. Ooh, now you're preaching. Because what is gossip? Gossip is telling the truth with ill intent. What is slander? Slander is telling lies with ill intent. Either way, if I go to anybody else other than to the person that I have this offense with, they have it with me, or somebody who's a part of the problem or the solution, then it's either gossip or slander. It's only going to lead to more damage. So Jesus is very clear. Go at once to that person who has an offense with you or you with them. It's always my move. P, plan a peace conference. The E, jot this down. Empathize with their feelings. Empathize with their feelings. Philippians 2 and 4, it says this, none of you should think only, ever say only. Don't think only of his own affairs, but consider, say consider. Consider other people's interests also. That word consider in the Greek is skopos, and it's from where we get our words telescope or microscope. He says, I want you to not only think about your own feelings, your own needs, your own interests, I want you to think about the interests, focus in on their feelings, their needs. You say, but I don't feel like I'm angry with them. I get it. But as followers of Jesus, I need to also empathize with their feelings. It may not change the issue, but I'm getting more understanding. Why is Lydia so upset? She just did this silly thing she shouldn't have done that hurt my feelings. But it could be that she's just having a rough day herself. You know? So how many of you are parents? Can I see your hand? All the parents in the house? Yeah? How many of you as parents ever have to do any kind of peacekeeping with your kiddos? All day, yeah, all day. So when you're doing peacekeeping with your kids, do you ever have to kind of empathize with their feelings? Little Johnny, he's just being all cranky. Well, you know how mamas are. Oh, he hadn't had his nap yet. Oh my gosh, I whoop his butt. Really? I'm sorry, I'll get some emails on that. Well, Lydia was always, John and Jim, they just haven't had their nap yet. I'm going to give them a nap. But if we'll stop to empathize with their feelings and their needs, and we may not agree with what they've done, but at least we'll have better understanding why they did it. So empathize with their feelings. A, this is so good. Attack the problem, not the person. Attack the problem, not the person. You can't fix the problem and fix the blame at the same time. You can't fix the problem and fix the blame at the same time. Proverbs 15:1 says, a gentle answer quiets anger, but a harsh one, what? Stirs it up. He's saying we need to engage our minds before we engage our mouths. That was a tough one for me to learn, still working on it. That God has given me 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. He wants me to talk way less than I listen. Thank you. Was that Lydia? We don't get the point across by being cross. I believe so strongly in this, I wrote it in a chapter in my book, Relationships 101. You can get that, by the way. Support my grandbabies. But I have a chapter called Fixing Feuds. And I talk all about how do you attack the problem, not the person. Because here's the goal. The goal is, I love my kids. I love my parents. I love my spouse. So I don't want to attack them. But I do want to attack this problem. So I literally had to learn this as a technique with Lydia and I. I have to separate the person from the problem. Visually, I had to see Lydia sitting here in this chair, and then I had to see the problem sitting over there. And then this is what I would say. I mean, I've done this hundreds of times. Lydia, I love you as a person, but I got to talk to you about this issue and how I feel about it. You know what's happening? I'm not attacking her. She doesn't feel, still not going to feel wonderful, but I'm not attacking her. You. No, I love you, and I want us to stay together the rest of our days, but we got to talk about this issue and how it makes me feel. So I'm no longer attacking her as a person, I'm attacking the problem. Ephesians 4:29, do not use harmful words, but only what? Helpful words, the kind that build up and provide what is needed. In other words, when I'm talking about the issue with someone in my family, I don't condemn them. I don't criticize them, and I definitely don't compare them. You're just like my mother. You're just like my father. Or this one is really good. You want to just get it going? You're just like my ex-wife. You're just like my ex-husband. Oh, Lord. You're going to have problems. So attack the problem, not the person. Is this helping y'all? What's helping me? Okay. Letter C. Peace plan. Cooperate as much as possible. Cooperate as much as possible. Romans 12:18 says, do everything possible on your part to live at peace with all men. Do everything possible. That means that sometimes you can do everything possible in your family to resolve the conflict, but you're not going to be able to because it's not about you, it's about them. They have the issue. And by the way, I just got to give you a heads up on this. You don't have to have peace in all your relationships for you to be happy. Some of us feel, man, if I could just get peace with all of my family members, then I could just have, such joy. No. Because that's not going to happen this side of heaven, because sometimes they're just a jerk and they're going to be a jerk until they die. They can go to heaven and Jesus go, oh, no. No. Because they're going to get in heaven and look at the dust on the streets of gold. Why do they get that mansion? Why only I get this little mansion? There's some people in this world, they're just cranky. They're mean. They're going to get to heaven by the skin of their teeth. So you got to do everything possible in you to try to resolve the issue. But if you can't, you've done your best, then you can move on. And that gives you peace. Because you move into acceptance in your relationship. Do everything possible on your part. One of the ways that you may want to try this is if you have thoughts towards a child or a parent or spouse, and it's like not good, you can thank them. It's okay. You can talk to God about them. It's okay. But just don't tell them. Because it's only going to make the issue worse. It may not get better, but you'll. So how many of you have ever made things worse by just saying something you should have kept inside your mouth? Anybody? Many of you heard of the famous conflict between Winston Churchill and Lady Astor. They hated, loathed each other. And Mr. Churchill made things worse by not keeping his private thoughts private. On one occasion, Lady Astor said to Churchill, she said, "If I were your wife, I would fill your cocktail glass with poison." Churchill said, "If you were my wife, I would drink it." On another occasion, Lady Astor said, "Mr. Churchill, you are disgracefully drunk." Churchill said, "Yes, I am, and you, my dear lady, are disgracefully ugly. And what's more, tomorrow morning, I will be sober." I think if Mr. Churchill would have just kept those thoughts to himself, the relationship was never going to be awesome, but it wouldn't have gotten worse. James 3:17 says, "Peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of good." Whatever you sow is what you're going to reap. So if I want others to cooperate with me, then I need to try to be more cooperating in bringing about peace. The letter E, jot this down in the peace plan. Emphasize reconciliation, not resolution. Emphasize reconciliation, not resolution. What does reconcile mean? To reconcile a relationship means to what? To reestablish this relationship. It's very important. Reconciliation doesn't mean I need to resolve all my differences with Lydia. Reconciling with my son, and some of you know the story, but over the last year, Jonathan, my youngest son, and I had, for the first time ever, we didn't talk for about 8 months. And I reached out, and he just wasn't in that space, and it was tough. One of the toughest seasons of my life. And when we got to the end of it, and Jonathan and I began to work at reconciling the relationship, we weren't seeking to resolve all of our differences, because he's different. And I'm normal. But we weren't seeking to resolve all of our differences. We were seeking to reconcile the relationship as a parent and as a son. See, this is very, very important, because it's very possible that if you're married today, you're married to somebody very different from you. Amen. My wife and I, y'all know the story. I don't have time to go into it, but she is just different. I'm normal. I think I've told you that, right? But we've been married almost, just past the 39 mark. 40 years next year. And I can tell you, in the early days, especially the first third of our marriage, it was hell. It was. We loved each other. But had it not been for our love of Jesus and our commitment to the marriage, we would have divorced easily, because we were polarized opposites. But it's when Lydia and I begin to realize you don't have to resolve those differences in order to get along. That I can be in covenant with my wife and love her deeply, yet still think that that's odd. Or her to look at me, and sometimes I get intense. I'm sorry. I'm a tense guy. Y'all sticking up for Lydia? My gosh. Where's my brothers? Come on, guys, help me out. But here's what I'm saying. To this day, Lydia and I still have to work on our differences. But I love that girl. She's my best friend. I am crazy about her. I'm serious. But she's still weird. Here's what I'm saying. When we focus on reconciliation, not resolution, we keep peace in our families. And I'm going to end with this, and then we're going to pray. When I'm working at reconciling with those in my family, I'm being just like my Father in heaven. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God. Why? Because you're acting like Daddy. The Father loved you and me so much, and all of our differences. We were estranged because of what Adam and Eve did in the garden. We were separated, but God said, I love you so much. You're my child. I want you to be with me forever. I'm sending my son to earth. And Jesus came to this earth. He went to the cross, and he paid the price on the cross, agonized and suffered for us. Why? Because Papa wanted reconciliation with you and me. And when Jesus is on the cross, it's like he reached up with one hand and he said, it is finished. He reached up to God the Father, and he reached down to you and I, to the human race, and he began to bring us back together again. And when Jesus said, it is finished, he put our hands into the hands of the Almighty God, our loving Father for all eternity. We have peace with God. Amen. Because God is a reconciler. So when you're working at peace, working at reconciliation, you're being just like your Father in heaven.